lots.
The existing zoning, right?
And they're RS65, both of them, or are they RS4?
The split.
The split zone.
Yeah, it's split.
Okay.
But we're just retaining what's there.
Right.
Okay.
So is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs.
Second.
Zelinski, is there a second by Mrs. O'Hara? Any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Mrs. Bottomoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Oshia?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes.
And the last motion would be to add a parcel within area ID 22 to be changed to business highway. And that is map 17, lot 50.
17, what time?
Lot 50.
Thank you. So moved.
That's a motion
Second.
Yeah.
to change the zone to business highway.
Correct.
Right.
And to add in on plat map 17, lot number 50.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski, seconded by Mrs. O'Hara. Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mrs. Bottomoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Oshia?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes. Thank you. So all set now?
You probably just anyone in town is muffled.
Recess, really? Recess, please.
Can I test it? Is it on now? I mean, because out there it's really hard to hear actually, you guys. Hi, Cynthia Roberts, 49 Beach Street, and I'm just continuing some of the feedback that I gave last time. I'm just trying to figure out, am I supposed to address this to Tom or to Mr. Vadeney? Okay, to you all? All right. So, last set of feedback was really questions about the zoning maps that were presented. And then this set of feedback is taking information that Engage North Smithfield has collected since January of 2018, so over a year, where we've been having monthly meetings with residents in different settings like the library, in people's houses, at Heritage Hall, at the high school here, in meetings here, to try and find out, and we've also been meeting on a monthly basis at Primrose, to try and find out what it is that people would like to see in the community. And our emphasis is on engaging residents and promoting health through engaging. And so that's the lens that this feedback is in. So the first chapter, the community chapter, that we gave a lot of feedback about to Tom back in November and October, and to the planning board, that was really focused on community. And what I noticed when I looked through all the other chapters is that there's kind of a disconnect between the community chapter and then the ensuing topical chapters, and I'll give an example of what I mean, but I have a lot of examples that I can just type up and give to Tom if he's going to address them. So it's things like in the community chapter, which was written in 2015 and put in that version, but then it never made its way out. We talk about certain values, like around residents having places to gather or having land for community gardens and things like that. But then as the chapters keep going, they're very focused on the topic. So like, I feel like I'm not being listened to, so maybe I should wait. Is it right for me to keep going? So things like transportation, for example, we talk about transportation in that section in the plan, but we don't have a vision for how to serve people who aren't served currently by the current transportation. It just talks about what service we have. And then, for example, in housing, it refers to like the state expectations around 10% affordable low-income housing, but it doesn't talk about the value that the community has around including people from all income levels in our community. And there's in fact a section that talks about how this community doesn't like low-income housing as a topic like that, we're against it. Sorry, I don't have the exact language, but it's in here. So I feel like I would like to see, and there's multiple points of this, where the values that we say we're trying to put forth as a community are actually woven into the sections of the chapters. So the housing one is an example I gave. So it's not true that the whole town doesn't want to bring more housing opportunities for low and moderate income people. It might be that at some meetings there's vocal people who have, things to say against it, but that's not really the value of the entire community. The other part is related to the zoning changes that were proposed last time we all met, which is that concept of filling in, is it called down zoning when it's more intense? Less intense, so up zoning. So the up zoning around Branch Village and other areas. And as far as things like green space go, we really should, and this isn't just me saying this, this is information I've been collecting and gathering from numerous residents, many of whom have other things tonight. But the fact that there's going to be such intense development in certain areas and like no parks really near them, if you look at the town, where the parks are in a different part of town. So I would like to see some language that talks about equitable access to green space for people who are living in the low-income areas. And it also ties into other things people brought up at the November potluck at the high school around connectivity of villages and having sidewalks in the more densely populated parts of town. So examples are Central Falls passed a green and complete streets ordinance last year. And granted, obviously, this is a rural community, and Central Falls is like a very dense 1 square mile city. But in the very dense parts of North Smithfield, we could possibly have green and complete street ordinances for those infilled sections, so that people who are living closer to each other have more access to walk to businesses, to safely get fresh air, because we know that there's many areas that are densely populated but do not have sidewalks and are not safe for bikes and things like that. And then probably the largest section of concern is around energy infrastructure in the community. So in the section of our comprehensive plan that talks about energy infrastructure, there's very little said about it really. Yet, so our last plan was in 2006 and now we're in 2019. So in those intervening years, obviously a lot has changed with energy infrastructure and our recognition that we need renewables and things like that. But there's not a lot that I could see written into the comprehensive plan that expresses, again, our values around that. There's references to state laws and guidelines and the existence of zoning ordinances, but it's not tied into a community value around what that means. And so, for example, I'm thinking of the historical and cultural resources chapter, which was also written in 2015, as like a bookend to the community chapter. And in there, it talks about, on page 7, incremental development as being dangerous to our community and to our cultural resources, and that it's a threat to the way we envision ourselves. So Engage North Smithfield would like to request a community conversation on energy infrastructure development in the community, because it is very incremental and none of us ever really know when it's coming down the pike. And whenever it comes up, it seems like that it's very developer driven and it's not community driven. And one of the things that people say they really value about living here is the scenic view sheds that we have. So like when you're on Route 146 and you see Martin's Farm and Woonsocket Hill Road and everything, or like where I live, I live near Mr. Batney, you see beautiful hills, and are those going to be protected? Do we want those to be protected? And also the disparate impacts that the infrastructure development has on different communities within North Smithfield. So like the National Grid down on Greenville Road, all of that infrastructure, a lot of people who I talk to want to understand like what kind of return on investment do we have to the community from that. It's like pretty ugly, and personally I have to drive by it every day. It's kind of a bummer, and I often find myself wishing to know like what's the return on investment for that infrastructure. Because somewhere along the way, someone made decisions to allow National Grid to come in and do that, and then are we getting money for that? I know there's answers to this, but I don't know what they are. And then the same thing with all the solar that's barreling into our town. And Exeter in Rhode Island just passed a moratorium on all solar development because it's like the Wild West right now in communities like North Smithfield, like Exeter, North Kingstown, Western Cranston, etc., Richmond. It's done in a very unplanned way for the resident perspective. Maybe the developers have plans and the planners and administrators have plans, but the community doesn't really know about it and doesn't know how it all fits together in a comprehensive way. And with Engage North Smithfield, our focus is on health. And like if we look at our community, a lot of what's happened in this community around the Superfund sites that are in this town, somewhere along the way, people made decisions to allow whatever it was to happen there. And if residents don't know about what's happening and can't really readily prepare and ask questions about environmental impacts and health impacts, and it's just like all these processes are set in motion and we don't really have like this comprehensive view of what the vision of this community is around energy infrastructure, that creates a feeling in residents of disenfranchisement, and there are many people who feel that way, and there's hardly anyone here because people don't feel comfortable to talk at these meetings unless there's a desperate sense of urgency. And the comprehensive plan is an opportunity for people to voice these kinds of concerns. So I do have a deep concern about our energy infrastructure vision in this town beyond, we all know about climate change and that we need to change to renewables. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think it's the manner in which all of this development is happening feels very uncomprehensive to people who aren't personally involved with it or personally benefiting from it. And I think if the community could understand what our returns are, how our taxes are being decreased, what kind of income is coming into the community. There's 4 slide presentations that just came out in February of 2019 by the state of Rhode Island that give guidance on how we should be citing this stuff. And one of them talks about public health and safety standards and about communities ultimately being responsible for that. So we are the stewards of this community, and I don't feel like we are sharing information in a way that makes us feel that we have control to steward this community beyond the developers driving it. And so among all the other feedback I gave about transportation and the other things that I can write up, we're also asking for a community conversation where we can have maps and ask questions about where is all the development, what are the size of the land. One of the guidelines that the state gives is to encourage energy development on commercial and industrial zoned land and not to take away forest land for it. But my understanding is there's a lot on deck to be cut down in this town, including hearsay, land that was possibly going to be purchased for green space. That's just a rumor. There's all sorts of rumors going around. So I'm not spreading it, I'm telling you what I heard. And this is why we need a community conversation, because there's all sorts of things that people are under the impression about, and there's a feeling of what's going on and why we would like to know. And so that is, I'm going to end with that by saying Engage North Smithfield will plan this with you. We would love to invite the zoning board, the planning board, anyone who's present tonight, have some maps and have some concrete conversations about what are all these developments and how does it impact the green space and the scenic landscape of this town and how it's going to affect our future and what are the benefits to the community.
Dr. Roberts, I just want you to know,
Use the mic, Paul, please.
I'm not projecting loud enough. Dr. Roberts, in case you're not aware, this council is in negotiation about trying to figure out if we can purchase green space. We are focused on protecting as much acquiring green space as economically feasible. And we're also aware of bond issues. We have money, but once we draw down on it, taxes go up, so it's a fine balance. Some people on this council have been a proponent of as much green space as prudent, as reasonable. So I just want to say to you right now, I know of no one, I've had no conversation with anyone that said green space or potential green space is being considered for new development of manufacturing of energy. So that's the first I heard of it.
Yeah, it was the first I heard of it the other day too. Again, I'm not generating it. Someone told me that. I honestly am talking to a lot of people about this. So I guess my question goes out there to say, is that something that we could have? Because is it every 20 years that the comp plan gets codified? 10, 20?
10 and 20 now.
10 to 20. So like we live in a really different era right now with solar development, and personally from all the people I've spoken with and the things I'm paying attention to in public health and on the state level, it seems to me we should have more community input into the vision of what our energy infrastructure investments in this community are before we can approve our plan, because it lays almost no roadmap whatsoever. And then when all these plans start rolling out that are development driven, the community has little to no recourse, such as that ordinance overlay that happened back in May or June. And that's another thing that I hear a lot about from people is disappointment that such an overlay was done in a manner that most residents didn't seem to really understand what was happening or the pace at which it was happening.
As far as having another meeting, the whole purpose of this, what we're going through right now, at this very instant, a public hearing on the comprehensive plan, this is the chance to get input from the community.
I'm giving you
This
my
is why we
input.
do this, because the state enforces is saying you need to have a public hearing to do this. This is the forum for these folks to come forward and bring their concerns and wants and needs to this board. That's the point of this right now. It's not to go out at another night on another meeting at something that's not even an official meeting. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in this world. This is how it works, that we come to a public hearing and we take public input. Now, if there's misinformation being put out there, I have no control over that. I'm not spreading it. I don't even hear it, number one. We can revisit this comp plan 4 times a year. Am I correct, Tom?
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
So we can revisit this comp plan. And as far as having no guidance on what solar's going on, I believe that the zoning guidance has been changed. The updates of that.
No, I wanted to reply to Cynthia just for a second, if I could, just because I think this plan works for you. I do. With respect to the housing, the recreational comment about Ranch Village, and what's now the energy, natural hazards, and climate change chapter, was a chapter not required under 6. So you're right, this one's a lot better than what it was. But about housing diversity, it said this plan doesn't speak to it. If you look at goal 1, it says achieve a diversity of housing opportunities that are affordable for the various population groups in North Smithfield, both current and future populations. Promote affordable housing options to households and families. That's a policy. Maintain the existing housing stock to preserve community character. Promote infill development. That's why they tackled the zone changes earlier tonight. If you go to the open space rec, I'm looking at, again, the draft comp plan that we've been working on over the past 2 years with the comp plan. First goal, provide a variety of active and passive recreational facilities serving town residents and visitors. Policy, increase land area of active recreation areas to meet present and future deficiencies. Well, if we're lucky enough to get a developer to invest in Branch Village, you can bet there's gonna be open space within that plan. We can ask for that with this. And then the energy policies are, I think, sound about reducing municipal energy use is the first goal. This policy is to encourage homeowners and businesses to be energy efficient, promote environmental sustainability through reduction of greenhouse gases. There's a thing here about an action. We had considered allowing solar as an accessory, allow that by right in the zoning code. So I think that this comp plan is really pretty good and in line with what it is that I thought you liked. The chapter that you wanted in the beginning, community, that's not a required element in state law. We can put that in for you, and I think it's good. And Gary and I changed it with you the first time. I changed it more recently, about 2 months ago, I think it was, again. So I'm hoping that you'll support what we have here tonight, so I can send this to the state to approve it. And if we want to amend it 3 more times over the next 12 months, we can do that. We're going to continue working with you. I know Bobby's been making maps, so we can continue to have the annual goals workshop meeting with the planning board. We're going to do that. So this is going to keep going. Like, it's not done here tonight if you let them approve it. That's what I wanted to say.
I think that's very encouraging, and I mean, I want to speak to the statement about, like, well, this is how it's done in the real world, because this also
I didn't
is...
say in the real world, this is how it's done by state law.
Right, I understand that, and I want to say that this is part of the community giving you feedback on it. So part of that feedback is asking for more engagement, because there are tables in here and there are things set forth that when actual development happens, the development doesn't go the way we say we value things. And that is what I'm concerned about, is residents being engaged and feeling a sense that they can have input, that there's this document that has a vision, but then there's things that happen in actual practice. And how do we bridge the two? Because I think more people would come to these meetings if they felt more educated about what all these tables mean. Like even what Tom just explained, it's very helpful to hear how what's set forth in these tables can